Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Doc Talk, conversation with Dr. Susan Brown, medical anthropologist and bone health expert, and Dr. Russell Jaffe, owner and founder of Perk Integrative Health. I'm Jayashree. I'm the clinical nutritionist for Perk Integrative Health, and today we're going to talk about a hot topic, the cytokine storm, and Dr. Jaffe is going to help us sort of break it down and tell us in detail what leads to it, where it is of concern. And Susan, over to you. I know you have some important issues to discuss on this.
Thanks, Jay. And thank you, Dr. Jaffe, for helping us out once again. You know, as I deal with a public that's very concerned with this COVID-19, and one of the things that's happened is people have become aware of a rather intricate medical topic of cytokine storm. People who don't know much about biochemistry are hearing, oh, there's this issue of cytokine storm that's very damaging, and that the suggestion that they have is that I shouldn't stimulate my immune system. I shouldn't support my immune system because my immune system is being overactive in this storm. So I wonder if you could help us see the big picture on immune competence and this whole issue of nourishing the immune system, the whole issue of cytokine storm. How is it best for people to perceive this and to proceed?
Well, as a functional immunologist for the last 30 plus years, there is a confusion of cause and consequence in regard to immune defense and repair systems being out of control. By definition, cytokine storm means that your immune system is out of control. And in 100% of cases, in every case of cytokine storm, there is an acute need for ascorbate, nature's form of vitamin C in large amounts, and magnesium to replenish and energize and restore what's called homeostasis, self-regulation in the immune system. Now, cytokines are a family of powerful chemicals. They are derived from the fats we eat. And if we take in more omega-3 EPA DHA, we get more calm cytokines. And if we take in more omega-6 fatty acids, especially if there's an imbalance that favors the omega-6, omega-6 is where you find omega-6 fats in chipped, processed, crisp, extruded, packaged foods. And Dr. Artemis Simopoulos, reviewing the National Health and Nutrition Survey, the NHANES recent data, points out that many Americans have 30 to 60 times more omega-6 than omega-3. And if you just stop the processed foods and go back to wholeness, to nature, nurture, and wholeness, you go back to a balance of essential beneficial fats. So cytokines are derived from the fats we eat. And some of them, they are all powerful, but some of them are evanescent. That means they are generated and they act in a very short period of time. So for example, when my lab, in collaboration with the Heart Institute, was studying what became the field of cytokines before we even had that nomenclature, we would give radioactive fat and then stop the reaction, kill the cell after 5 seconds, because we wanted to measure the really most powerful thromboxanes that then degrade into prostaglandins. So if you've heard of prostaglandins, PGE1, PGE2, PGF2 alpha, these are the products, they are the end result of a very elegant machinery, cellular process that is mediated through these thromboxanes. And we were among the first to be able to study them and quantify them and show how to keep the immune defense and repair system focused on repair, to keep the immune defense and repair system in balance, because 100% of the time, people who get cytokine storm have a form of vitamin C deficiency and what's called metabolic acidosis. And when you have enough vitamin C and enough magnesium, cytokine storm does not happen. So, for example, in China, in Korea, in Hong Kong, in some parts of Canada, physicians are giving either larger oral or IV parenteral vitamin C and monitoring for metabolic acidosis, because you can die of metabolic acidosis and you can die of acute vitamin C deficiency. And every sign, every comorbidity, everything that people are terrified about in regard to cytokine storm is a sign that you have a massive deficiency of vitamin C and a deficit in magnesium, maybe zinc as well. That would not happen, would be prevented from happening if you follow our PIH viral protection recommendations. So cytokine storm, definitely something to avoid. Cytokine storm, we know what it is. We see the consequences and they're catastrophic. And we know how to avoid it through nature's vitamin C, fully buffered, fully reduced, all L ascorbate, and enough magnesium to buffer the acids of metabolism, called metabolic acidosis.
So, Dr. Jaffe, that's very clear and consistent with what you've been teaching all these years. A person might ask, why is there such an increased need for vitamin C when this infection becomes so powerful?
No, you see, again, this is a very common misunderstanding. If you are a hospitable host and you get exposed to a sufficient viral load of something you haven't seen before, your immune system hasn't seen it before,
right,
you will get sick. That doesn't mean you're going to get cytokine storm.
Okay.
Cytokine storm is it's right next to death. So you definitely want to avoid cytokine storm. And we know how to do that. We know how to do that. That doesn't mean that the average practitioner, wherever, has gotten the news that we have published, that others have presented in medium.com, the user's guide to vitamin C that Amory Levins and Eric Rasmussen authored on medium.com that people can download, and this viral risk reduction protocol prevents cytokine storm. And I do want to come back to something that you correctly say on behalf of people who really are getting misinformation. They're not getting the accurate information.
Right.
So the notion that you don't need, in a time of risk, a time of new virus exposure, that you don't need an immune system, the innate and adaptive parts of your immune system need to be on the top of their game. And ascorbate and magnesium, with other cofactors, including zinc and CoQ10, etc., keep the self-regulating process called homeostasis and completely prevent cytokine storm.
Excellent.
Now, I do want to look at this issue of the respiratory tree and the exposure to the virus.
Okay.
Because the virus is now going global. Hundreds of millions of people will be exposed to this virus, and most will never know it because they don't even get the flu. They don't even have any symptoms. However, what we need to remember is the data that is now coming out that supports nature, nurture, and wholeness through nature's ascorbate and magnesium based on urine pH, or however you measure it. You can do venous blood gases if it's a hospital situation. And I can talk, if you want, about what happens when the body is overburdened and exhausted. Because it's not just autoimmunity, although diabetes and other autoimmune conditions are comorbidity risk factors. But diabetes, well, as my friend Peter Stranger coined the phrases, diabetes kills, diabetes costs. Diabetes is a choice. If you keep your hemoglobin A1C below 5%, you're still diabetic. You can't go out and have empty calorie sugar. But I think people are sweet enough as they are. They don't need as much sugar as we get in our diet. In fact, I don't add, that I know of, any empty calorie sugar, even though the fruits and vegetables and seeds and nuts and sprouts and things that we have, including edible flowers, make not just interesting, but savory to even sweet, whole foods.
Dr. Jaffe, when you say about host hospitality, this may be a little bit off, but when we trying to kind of support the immune system, so the person who is strong enough to fight the virus does not show any symptoms, but will they be able to carry the virus to another person, or does that make them immune to that as well?
Very good question. It is clear that people can spread the virus before they have symptoms. And usually, but not always, once they recover, they're not shedding and spreading. There are exceptions, and the exceptions are the people whose immune defense and repair system was hospitable. And so I come back to this issue of host hospitality, host resilience, and what do we do in times of pandemic? Because over the next period of time, the world is going to get exposed to this virus. But where I was going in regard to the respiratory tree is you have in healthy people, in the people who would follow this protocol, you have many resistance factors. The lungs are not dry. And in that little fluid, you have secretory IgA. You have opsonins and defensins. You have various molecular protections so that if the virus comes by, it's going to get trapped before it gets to you. But if you don't have those host resilience, those innate defense factors, now you're hospitable. Now, if you're hospitable and get exposed, you're going to get infected. If you're not hospitable and you get exposed, you might well have a response. Your body might say, oh, I've seen this. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to produce either T cells or B cells. I don't want to get this too technical, but we have, if the virus got in, it should be stopped by the innate and acquired immune defense and repair responses, which in turn are very energy consuming, require very high amount of ascorbate and magnesium and other essential factors. Essential here means your body can't make it. You have to take it in from the outside. And I'm constantly amazed at the experts who talk, who don't point out how important host defense, resilience, homeostatic factors are. But for sure, anyone who is listening to this is welcome to take a deeper dive, look at the documents that you can download online that go into the particulars of why, when you use nature's forms, you get better results more quickly. And when you often use a work-alike, something that emulates nature but isn't the natural form, in my experience, both as a clinician and as a researcher, the work-alikes are deceptive and really don't work. So there are people, for example, who will tell you that they took 1,000 milligrams or 500 milligrams of vitamin C and they got diarrhea and vitamin C doesn't agree with them. Well, that synthetic form, that damaged oxidized form, that form with binders, fillers, excipients that could be irritating, is exactly what we don't recommend. And we do recommend, as you know, Susan, because we've been colleagues for decades, we do recommend using the amount of ascorbate you need based on the C cleanse, or whatever guidance you follow about really ramping up the source of the electrons. Ascorbate donates electrons so that eventually the mitochondrial battery, the cytochromes, can function, can produce the ATP. And the ATP is protected by ascorbate but needs magnesium. 1 molecule of magnesium for every ATP molecule for it to do its job. And then you have the proton gradient, which is what keeps the battery functioning. And if you lose the magnesium, you lose the proton gradient. And now the battery begins to shut down. The mitochondria that detoxifies will protect itself and shut down unless you have what is called the proton gradient. There's lots of things that there's lots of elegant but understandable benefits from following this kind of proactive but personal approach.
There's so many ramifications of this, and certainly the lack of attention to host hospitality is a really big one. And I have a question about autoimmune disease, but first let's go back to ascorbate for a second. The other thing that's really missing that I see from our understanding as the public is this idea of energy, that we don't consider that there's a finite amount of energy, and the body has, just like we have to have vitamins and minerals, we have to have this energy production, this flow of electrons in the body. And it's very helpful when you explain to us how this particular high quality, fully buffered, fully reduced ascorbate actually is a powerful electron donor. Is it fair to say it energizes every cell in the body, or how could we define this?
Well, I'm going to quote Albert Szent-Györgyi, the fellow who isolated ascorbate from Hungarian paprika. He said that in biology, in life, ascorbate is as important as oxygen and light. Now, oxygen and light are fundamental. So is ascorbate.
Yep.
We are among the 3 species on the planet that cannot convert sugar into vitamin C. And a footnote, very often sugar cravings are actually people who need ascorbate, and when they do the C cleanse and get the ascorbate they need, the sugar cravings go away. And then they can better manage their diet and weight, etc.
So part of our electrical generation system is really dependent on ascorbate.
Ascorbate in biology sets the oxidation reduction potential. The vitality of the cell is set by only 1 molecule of ascorbate. And when you have enough, you have what's called a healthy low redox, and everything flows efficiently. If you lack ascorbate, you have a high redox, and now your cells are vulnerable to infectious agents that only multiply when there's a lack of ascorbate and magnesium.
Perfect. Dr. Jaffe, let's go back just one second to our issue of the immune system. We mentioned the cytokine storms becoming a popular term, and we're struggling to help people understand that. There also individuals say, well, I've got autoimmune disease. My immune system is overactive. I really don't want to do anything that might enhance immunity or strengthen my immunity. How can you explain that? How do we help people better understand the many possibilities around the immune system?
Well, if your immune system is chronically overstimulated to exhaustion, then you could have progressive autoimmune disease. Mm-hmm. Autoimmunity by definition means self-attack. A healthy immune system is homeostatic and never attacks. A healthy, innate, and adaptive immune defense and repair system that is well nourished, that is not overstimulated due to maldigestion, dysbiosis, enteropathy, which is atrophy of the digestive capacities. Only when the immune system is overstimulated and exhausted does autoimmune self-attack progress. And if you want to put autoimmunity into remission, you follow the lymphocyte response assays that measure all delayed immune responses in an ex vivo system. Ex vivo means in the lab, the cells react just as they do in the body. After 80,000 cases and publishing the most successful outcome study in type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes, the essence of the results are pretty clear. A full 1 milligram per deciliter reduction in hemoglobin A1C. That means adding 20 plus quality years to the life of the people. And everyone who was admitted into either of the two studies had to start from best standard of conventional care, according to the American Diabetes Association. So when one of the profound misunderstandings is that if you have autoimmune disease, your treatment is to suppress the overactivity.
Exactly.
And if you go back 50 years when we didn't know about the immune system very much, we knew it was we called it a black box. There was input and there was output. And if things were in homeostatic equilibrium, oh boy, you could celebrate and ignore it. But it was still really important because it's your immune defense and repair system. And by the way, it's also responsible for eliminating the cancer cells that people make every day. So it has many functions. When we started our work in the early 1980s, it was time to open up the black box of the immune system and find out for each individual what was burdening, what foods, chemicals, medications, hair, danders, or feathers were causing their immune system to get overactive and exhausted. And we've been applying that now over 80,000 cases, 25 million cell cultures, the most precise cell culture in the world with less than 3% variance, over thousands of blind split samples over 3 years, reported at ASIP, that's the American Society of Investigative Pathology, where you would want to present really exciting information to colleagues who could critique it. So we have the first one-step cell culture. We have the most precise ex vivo cell culture. We are ready for those who want to know about themselves so that they can have a proactive, predictive, personalized, primary prevention protocol.
And and so you end up with this comprehensive protocol actually nourishing the immune system back into normal homeostatic function. People needn't worry that, oh, I can't take these nutrients because they're going to make my immune system more overactive. That's the misunderstanding that we see commonly.
Right. That's one of the very common misunderstandings. Even many physicians who I guess weren't present when the new functional, integrative, comprehensive, personalized information came out about 30 plus years ago.
Okay.
And so, yes, scientific information, as you know, Susan, is doubling in less than 4 years.
Less than 4 years?
When I graduated in the early 70s, the dean tried to tell a joke. And he said, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that half of what we taught you was wrong. And we thought, no, that can't be the good news. He said, the other news is we don't know which half.
Yeah.
Look at Sir William Osler. His brilliant essays, Equanimitas is the title of one series. Look at his textbook of medicine where he points out you never treat a disease, you always take care of a person.
Yeah.
Go back to Hippocrates. Let your food be a medicine, let your medicine be your foods. What you eat and drink, what you think and do, determines your health future. So when you start from the notion that autoimmunity is self-attack, and that means by definition that your immune system is overactive, it would be logical to give immunosuppressive agents, and they are commonly given. However, the people who want physiology before pharmacology are welcome to this new generation of functional and personalized and predictive tests.
Where you can obtain normalization or correction of the immune overactivity.
Absolutely. What we showed in our fibromyalgia community-based outcome study
Yes,
was
yes.
that in just 6 months, people were either in remission or trending towards remission. And we have so many case reports. So if
Yes, yes, yes.
someone has a specific kind of autoimmune condition, Jayashree or you can review an analogous situation, a case that sounds just like them, that followed these lifestyle and physiologic guidances and went into sustained remission. Sustained
Sure.
remission from, and there are hundreds, some people say now over 1,000 autoimmune diagnoses, and every one of them has at its cause an overstimulated and exhausted immune defense and repair system that is crying for help. And repair deficit, known as inflammation, leads you to more severe autoimmune consequences.
Right. Yes. Yes, we certainly see that in clinical practice. I'm just thinking of a way to express to people that they need to be concerned that if they support their immune system, or if they try to benefit their immune system through diet and supplements and this kind of test, that it's not going to lead to further overactivation of the immune system. The distinction between activation and exhaustion, I think, is what you're
Well,
saying.
but why would it be overstimulated? It's overstimulated because of people eating the wrong foods, not being well hydrated, not practicing healing response mindfulness practices, restorative sleep, and how to achieve it. These are all resources that we have and continue to make available that people can download and practice.
Right.
How to get to Carnegie Hall, you got to practice. Knowing is a step. Practicing is much more important. Preaching is easy. Practicing is really more challenging. And I'm smiling because I'm a practitioner, and I've been a practitioner long enough that I've trained enough that I'm now mentoring another generation of practitioners who are really interested in the individual and how to enhance and evoke their healing responses rather than go to war with the body.
Right. Thank you. That's very clear. It's very clear.
Now, people will talk to you about IL-6, interleukin 6.
Okay.
That's one of those fat-derived molecules. People will talk to you about CRP and, more importantly, HSCRP, high-sensitivity C-reactive protein. C-reactive protein goes up when there's a repair deficit, that is, when there's inflammation, which is repair deficit. When the repair deficit is overcome because the immune system has the ability to both defend and repair, when that occurs, the CRP, HSCRP, comes down to a healthy value of less than 0.5. So we even know what the goal values are, what the best outcome values are, and we even know how to more safely get people there based on what they eat and drink, think, and do. Then people will talk to you about inducible proteins, because when the body is under stress, certain proteins go up. Ferritin, fibrinogen, alpha-2 macroglobulin, beta-1 microglobulin. There are many, many inducible proteins, which means the body is under a kind of deficit attack. It lacks the essentials that could be made available to it. And in that deficient condition, it's doing the best it can to keep things together until it gets really exhausted and then collapses. IgA deficiency. IgA deficiency is the most common acquired immune deficiency by far.
IgM, you say?
No, IgA.
IgA.
IgM is the rapid response but short-term first responder antibody. IgG and IgA and IgD are the long-lived memory antibodies. But IgA deficiency is the most common acquired immune deficiency. Babies don't have it. Babies have secretory IgA and IgA. And what causes that deficiency is maldigestion, dysbiosis, eating a diet that will cause fragments that should be kept out of your body, tiny, tiny fragments, but they are large enough for your immune system to recognize them as foreign, and in the best of cases, engulf them, put them into a recycling center in the dendritic cell called a lysosome, break it down to the building blocks, and make those available to rebuild the cell.
Wow.
On the other hand, if you lack ascorbate and magnesium, then those innate cells don't gobble up what's foreign, and what's foreign might just be able to land and take advantage of the cells that are hospitable. And that's what goes on when COVID virus isn't stopped before it gets in, it isn't stopped when it gets in, and it then finds a specific receptor and docks with it or binds to it. But look at how many steps of host defense collapse, overstimulation, exhaustion, the person had to become hospitable to the virus.
So I do see clients that have low IgA, so that would be sort of a tip-off that they would be greater risk for this COVID and really a more urgent need to regenerate homeostasis in the immune system.
Well, as you know, Susan, I think in the 21st century, we all need to be constantly vigilant and regenerating our immune defense and repair system. Right. But yes, especially the people you're talking about, whose IgA is low, as a sign that their immune system is overstimulated and becoming exhausted.
That would make sense.
Because that is a parameter that they're measuring occasionally in clients that you see.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Thank you. That's another list of the more hospitable hosts, another characteristic of an individual that should really pay special attention.
Right. Now, there's a lot of writing and misinformation around the issue of cause and consequence in regard to the catastrophic cases where tiny blood vessels get sludged up with rigid, damaged, oxidized, ascorbate deficient, magnesium deficient cells. And these tiniest blood vessels, they're called arterioles, are what regulate the flow of life. So when the ascorbate goes to zero, when the oxidative damage makes the cells more rigid, then the cells can't wiggle through these tiny blood vessels. And you, as a pathologist, I can describe hemorrhagic shock, and that's what happens. First, microhemorrhage, followed by inability to regulate blood pressure, and death. So, as Mel Brooks, the 2,000-year-old man, taught us, don't do that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That was...
You know, it's interesting because I happened upon this research on sepsis, the septis and intravenous C that this Dr. Malik was working with and had terrific results with it. And it's sort of fascinating how all that's been set aside or really minimized.
Well, he's a colleague. He did something that's a pilot, and he reported his results. However, methodologists, people whose full-time activity is to design and execute clinical trials, have been critical of his preliminary, clinical, and to me, much appreciated report. This is part of why the User's Guide to Vitamin C was authored by Amory Levins and Eric Rasmussen, available on medium.com. I can tell you that in certain parts of the world, the people at risk, these are the people whose autoimmune disease is progressive. These are the people who either were exposed to air pollution, tobacco smoke, or vaping. These are the people who have high blood pressure that is not adequately controlled despite medication, they are the at-risk people. And while there are always exceptions among millions and millions of exposures, I can tell you they are the at-risk people. I, in the beginning, did a very back of the envelope kind of thought process about how many people in that part of China were diabetic, hypertensive, smoked cigarettes, were exposed to air pollution.
Mm-hmm.
In hindsight, I was appropriately cautious, but I could explain 98% of all the people that had bad outcomes.
Huh.
And now, with more refined data, you can explain 99+% of all the people that have bad outcomes. So, yes, we all need to learn from this how hospitable most of us are because of essential factor deficits that are correctable. And the sooner we correct them, the better for all of us.
Yes, yes, yes.
Right. Awesome.